Hey guys, welcome back to the Compass Games Learn to Play series. Today we welcome back Christopher Muller, and he's going to be teaching us how to play his new game, Burning Banners, Rage of the Witch Queen. So without further ado, over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Mo. All right, so I'm going to do just a real quick introduction to the game Burning Banners coming out from Compass Games. So this is a fantasy game. You're looking at a piece of the map here. It's all sort of hand-drawn art with settlements. These guys are settlements. There's mines that the dwarves mine in. These are lairs where you can go in and look for treasure. There's wilderness terrain, which is mountains. Over here, there's some swamps, forests. So roads let you move quickly, rivers difficult to cross, but there's bridges and things over top of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the introductory scenario. I'm going to talk you through the real basic rules just so you know how it works. There's two games that are provided in Burning Banners. One is the basic game, which is meant for two reasons. One is to learn the game. It's a really good way to just lower the complexity. Not that it's a complex game, but to lower the complexity and be able to learn and get playing very quickly. And then there's an advanced game, which adds in a lot of really flavorful, fun stuff like magic, heroes, monsters, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go into any of those. I have done a series of YouTube videos, a playthrough with a bunch of my play testers where you can actually see the game being played sort of in the wild. But this is just going to be a real quick look at the components, the rules, and what you're going to get in Burning Banners. These hexes are really big. So the units in the game, that's a 1-inch unit. The control markers are small. They're like a 5/8 inch. But the reason you have these big counters is because there's lots of great art in this game. So there's lots and lots of kind of cool armies. These are all armies. And then there are monsters and heroes that also have all kinds of great art. So I wanted to make sure that there was enough room on these that you really could get a good look at what the armies have. So that there's a lot of art in the game, and it's emphasized on the pieces and on the map. You have Playmats. So here's an example. This is for the Oathborn. There's 6 different factions, 6 different kingdoms. Their iconography is shown here up top. These are the bad guys. I'll show you the bad guys. The Army of the Night are vampires. So these are the main enemy, this army of vampires. They're allied with the goblins. That's these guys. They include trolls, hill trolls, mountain trolls, armies of plague flies. And the other army that they're allied with are the orcs, who come in from the east. These mats are used. Every player, every kingdom has one of these mats. You can play multiple kingdoms. So you could play the vampires and the orcs, and you would have 2 mats out, one for each kingdom. And their pieces get stacked like these. The pieces get stacked in these areas. So it's a way to sort of organize your pieces. The Empire is these purple guys. This is the resistance factions. They're the ones fighting against the vampires and the monsters. There's Fjordland, who we'll see in this game. They're right here. They're Vikings. And there's the Oathborn, who are the dwarves. That's these guys. Now, the invasion of Dreyfeld, which is this introductory scenario, occurs in the history of the game. It occurs before the War of the Burning Banners, which is a sort of main event for this game. There's battles that occur before that. There's a couple battles that occur after that. So you're getting a lot of different campaigns you can play in the game. So this introductory one, the Oathborn and the Fjordland are at war on just a portion of one of these maps. But later, once the war starts, these guys are both allies. All right, let's just go through what's involved in a turn. The game is played in seasons. So each turn in the game is a season. This game starts in the spring of year 1. We'll go to advance to the summer when the first season's done, advance to the autumn, and in the autumn, this campaign end marker shows you when it's over. So you can do games that are multiple years, 1.5 years, that sort of thing. Those are all outlined in the campaign book. So each campaign, you're going to set up your counters to show when the game begins and when it ends. So in each season, each kingdom will have a turn, and they're going to be played in this order. So in the game that we're going to be looking at, the Oathborn are going to go first. Fjordland will go second. When they've both taken a turn, the season advances. These markers just get moved down when when the turn is over. So you know, okay, the Oathborn are done, Fjordland's done, advance the season. These books down here, these are study markers. They're used in the advanced game. I'm not going to go into that. If you want to check out my video later, you can see how those work. Over here is income. The Oathborn begin with 2 income. That's 2 gold every turn. They get that at the beginning of every season. They'll get their income. And the Fjordland are going to get 4 income. So that's what those are for. This just sits off to the side. It's just a way of, if the Fjordland here marches into Zarmbar, captures it, puts their control marker there, their income will go up 1, and the Oathborn income will go down 1. So these will be adjusted as the game progresses. Let's look at how you set up the game. So when you set up the game, generally you have nobody on the board to begin with. Each kingdom is going to set up their units. For this one, the Oathborn sets up first. So the Oathborn has 6 gold. This little icon here is just what the vassal module uses. You'll actually have gold coins in increments of 1, 5, and 10 that you'll use in the game. So the Oathborn are going to have 6 gold to set up their units with, and they control these 2 settlements, Zarmbar and Shaded Vale. So if you look at the map, Zarmbar has this Oathborn logo over it. That means it's a loyal settlement. It's part of the Oathborn kingdom. Shaded Vale is a neutral settlement. It does not have any symbol here. So at the beginning of the game, it's not part of any of the 6 kingdoms. But right now, at the start of the scenario, it's controlled by the Oathborn. And that's what this marker shows. So right now, it's neutral. When it has this marker in it, it's controlled. So there's loyal settlements and there are neutral settlements. If we look right here, Fort Garad is neutral and nobody controls it. In this scenario, we're only going to use a few of the settlements on the map, again, because it's an introductory scenario. We're going to ignore the lairs, the things with little monster heads on them. Those are scary hexes that you can't enter in this version of the game. So Fjordland controls Norstead, has its marker there. Fartumed has its control marker there. And Barlas on the Lake is a Fjordland loyal settlement. So this settlement here is the 3rd Fjordland settlement. And like I said, the dwarves have these 2. The victory conditions for the game are, at the end of turn 3, whoever controls the most settlements wins. There are obviously 5 of these settlements. And then there's also Fort Garad. You can't go into Chanos. You can't go any other settlement, but Fort Garad here is in play. You can try to capture Fort Garad, put your control marker there, and that will make a total of 6 settlements that are in play. Whoever has the most wins. If both sides have the same number, the Oathborn win. So what that tells you is that the Oathborn are the defenders and the Fjordland kingdom, they're the attackers, because they need to actually hold more than the other guy. If it's the same number, the Oathborn are going to win. So Oathborn set up first. With that understood, Fort Garad, if you look here next to the name, there's an anchor. That means it's a port. It means you can use ship movement when you leave here with a bonus. And it's also a fortification. So that tower symbol means it's a fortification. It's when you're attacking it, it's harder to hit people inside there. This symbol here is a mine. So this hex, and if you look, you can see this yellow boundary shows you where the mine is. A gray boundary is a settlement. This red is obviously a lair, can't go in there. There's blue sea layers out here, you can't go in there. These mines, anybody can go through them. The Oathborn can send their minor armies into them to gain money. Each of the kingdoms in the game have some kind of sort of cultural benefits. So for the Oathborn, one of them is that they can mine with their armies and get additional income out of their mines. So let's look at setting up. If you look at the units here in the playmat, there's a stack of units. So the Oathborn can build a bunch of miners. They have some King's Crossbows armies. The number in the upper left-hand corner is the cost to build it. So to build a King's Crossbows army, it costs you 3 gold. Again, we have 6 to start with. This icon here, there's a black and a white bar. If you look, each of them have different versions of that. Like the Oath Takers have 2 black and 2 white. The Dragon Sledges have 2 black. This Storm Giant over here has 3 black and 3 white. What those refer to are, that's the combat rating of the unit. And those correspond to 2 different kinds of dice. There are 8-sided dice, which are black, and they're called heavy dice. And there are white 6-sided dice that are called light dice. So this Storm Giant, when he's in combat, he's going to throw 6 dice. That's what that shows you. 3 of them will be black 8-sided heavy dice, and 3 will be white 6-sided light dice. And when you roll all those dice, what you're looking for are 5s or better. So obviously, the 8-sided dice, the heavy dice, is going to hit more, roll more successes more often. The light dice will. So there's basically 2 types of combat. So the miners have 1 light dice. They're just going to roll 1 d6 during combat, 6-sided dice. And the King's Crossbows will roll 1 6-sided dice and 1 8-sided dice. So more powerful, obviously. Storm Giant is over the top powerful. The cost reflects that. Miner costs you 1 gold to build. King's Crossbows cost you 3. The icon down here in the corner, this particular one, it's hard to see because it's kind of small, but that's a ranged icon. So it's like 2 little arrows. These guys win ties in combat. That's what ranged gives you. Dragon Slayer, they have something called stealth, and that lightning bolt is the stealth. It allows you to conduct an ambush combat. So combat is usually fought simultaneously. Both sides roll. One side's successes reduce the other guy's successes, and whoever has the most wins. If you are fighting an ambush, you do them non-simultaneous. So the ambushing unit fires first, and if the defender survives, he rolls back using his combat rating. I'm going to bring out Fjordland so you can see some of their abilities. Well, here, look at this Draken. He's got 3 icons. He has stealth, which is that top one. He has ranged, and he has flying. The wings are flying. The Valkyries also have flying. Flying allows you to move basically without paying movement penalties when you move. You can go over hostile settlements. You can go over hostile armies. You can fly over mountains without paying any additional costs. So flying is very powerful. Those are some of the things that you're looking at when you're buying new units. So during setup, you're going to spend your gold as much as you want. You don't have to spend all of it. You can save it and build later if you want. The way you spend it is you say, okay, I'm going to build a miner in or adjacent to a friendly settlement. So I'm going to build 1 miner here adjacent to Shaded Vale. That cost me 1 gold. So I'm now down to 5. Stacking in the basic game, there's no stacking. You cannot have 2 armies in the same hex. So it's only ever going to be 1 army. In the advanced game, you can add a hero. A hero can stack with an army, but in the basic game, it's always, and in the advanced game, it's always only 1 army per hex. So we're going to build another miner, and we'll build that miner also adjacent to Shaded Vale. The reason for that is I want to get these miners into the mines to start generating gold for the dwarves. Their movement rating, that's what this number is down here, is 2. So they have to be able to get to these mines. Let's see. That leaves me with 4. Zarnbar is obviously a target for those Fjordlanders, so we're going to put one of our more powerful heavy armies there. We're going to buy an Iron Legion. He costs 4, but if you look, he hits with 2 heavy and 1 light dice. They are a powerful unit. And that is all of my money. And the Oathborn have now spent all their gold, so they're done. They're set up. Once they're done, Fjordland can set up. So same deal. They can set up in or adjacent to any of their settlements. They have these 3 settlements. They have 15 gold, so they're on the offensive. They have more to work with. Far-Too-Mad looks like it's sort of our jump-off point. So we'll build a Sea Reaver. He's sort of roughly equivalent to an Iron Legion. We'll build him next to Far-Too-Mad. He cost me 3. We're going to build a Ranger. The Rangers have light dice, but they have ranged, so they win ties, but they only have 2 light dice, and they move 4. They're very quick. The Sea Reavers, you see, they're roughly equivalent to these Dwarven armies moving 2, but the Rangers can move 4. They're very quick. That's going to cost me 4. I'm just going to go ahead and build another Sea Reaver down here. So that's, what we spent? We spent 8, 9, 10, 11 of our 15. So we have 4 left. For 4, we will get 2 freeholders. One will go in Far Temed to basically guard against any shenanigans by the dwarves. The other will go into Norstead again to protect it. So we are also now at 0, and Fjordland is now done setting up. So we have our armies set up, and we will now go to the first season, spring of year 1. In this case, it is year 565 of the vernal era. The Oathborn, the turn track shows you who goes first. The Oathborn are gonna move first, and Fjordland's going to go second. The first thing you do in your turn is you have an income step. So you're going to get your income. There's an income phase, which includes an income action step. Some of these kingdoms will have something they have to do or are able to do during the income action step. Neither of these armies have that, so that you just skip that part. And then the income step, basically you just gain gold equal to your income. So the Oathborn are going to get their 2 gold. In the game, they're going to throw 2 coins on here, and they can use that to build new units, just like we did with the setup, in or adjacent to settlements during the turn. So you can move, build. It's very free flowing. Let's just start by getting some more gold. So if we look over here, what are the Oathborn's cultural benefits? Well, the Oathborn are miners, so miner armies can perform mine actions. They also have mountaineering. No movement penalty when entering mountain hexes, except for this siege engine does pay full price. So normally when you go into a mountain, it costs you an extra movement point. When you go into any wilderness, woods, mountains, swamps, you pay an extra movement point. Clear, open plains terrain, that costs you 1 to enter. So for anybody except the Oathborn, moving from here to here would cost you 2 movement points because you're going into a mountain hex. But we are miners, so we're going to go here for 1 and here for 2. We could also cross this river. That's an extra 1. We don't have any ability to cross that, so we could go like this. We could cross the river for 1 and enter Dwarven Falls for 2. So how armies move is they spend their movement points, so you do as much moving as you want or are able to, and when you're done, you can perform an action. Action is usually attacking, but there's a number of different actions you can do. You can perform ship movement. If you're damaged, you can recover. And if you're a miner army, you can work a mine. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to work a mine. In the game, these guys rotate 45 degrees when they're done. This miner's done. He's moved. Now we can perform his action. His action is to mine. When you mine, you get $1. So we're just going to jack this up by 1. All right, he's done. So again, ordinarily in the game, you would turn him 45 degrees to show he's done. Now I'm going to go to this miner. She's going to go 1, 2 to the endless paths. So I'm in the hex. That's the hex with this cross thing. That's the mine. And she will also use her action to generate a gold to work the mine. The Oathborn now have $4. What do we want to do? We want to attack these Sea Reavers. So we're going to actually leave Zarnbar to do that. Well, are we? So I'm going to talk about besieging. The Sea Reavers are besieging Zarnbar. What that means is they have an army adjacent to the settlement. When there's an enemy army adjacent to a settlement, it's besieged, and no armies can be built in or adjacent to it while it's besieged. The Iron Legion would like to get rid of the Sea Reavers, so they're just going to stay where they are, and they'll just attack the Sea Reavers from inside the town. Towns have garrisons, but those only work on defense. Every town has a 1 light dice garrison that's just intrinsic. If the Sea Reavers were attacking Zarnbar and there was nobody there, it would get a 1 white dice garrison. If there's an army in it, you don't get any garrison. The army basically takes over the defense of the town. All right, so the Iron Legion attacks the Sea Reavers. The Iron Legion is going to roll 3 dice. 2 heavy, 1 light, and the Sea Reavers will in return roll 1 black and 2 white. So let's go up here and we'll just see what that looks like. So here's the Iron Legion. They roll a 5, that's 1 success, a 4, that's a miss, and then 1 white dice is a 6. So they just rolled 2 successes. The Sea Reavers are going to roll their 1 heavy for a success and their 2 lights for a miss and a miss. So the net result was 1 success for the Sea Reavers, 2 successes for the Iron Legion. How that converts to hits is the 1 Sea Reaver success negates 1 Iron Legion success. So those are countered. That leaves you with 1 Iron Legion success. At the end, that converts to a hit. A hit will weaken a strengthened army. What you see there's red on the side, that means that army has been weakened. If it takes another hit, it can't flip. It's just eliminated, and it's returned to the Fjordland playmat when it's eliminated. Again, the Iron Legion would now rotate 90 degrees to show that it's done. And that would be all the units that the Oathborn have. Now, I would have liked to have eliminated this guy entirely. If I'd done 2 hits, I would have removed him. Zarenbar would have been no longer under siege, and I could have used these 4 gold to build somebody there. But I can't because I didn't do that. So I'm going to have to build here in Shaded Vale. I'm going to build another Iron Legion here in Shaded Vale, and that uses all my money. So the Oathborn have finished building all their stuff. He's going to be able to move. When you build units in the setup, they're all ready, it's called. Ready means they're face up like this. They're not rotated 45 degrees. When you're rotated 45 degrees, you're considered finished. So right now, the miners, both miners are finished. This Iron Legion is finished. This Iron Legion will be ready, because he's being built in a friendly settlement. If he's built adjacent to a settlement, you can do that, but he comes into play finished. So he'd be rotated automatically. He wouldn't be able to do anything. If this siege had been broken and I wanted to build him here, I could do it, but he would enter play finish. He couldn't then do anything. But because I'm building him in Shaded Vale, he can still act and do whatever he wants to do. He's going to move up this road. There's a special rule. If you use all your movement to move from one road to another, you get an extra movement point. So he could theoretically go 1, 2, 3, and if the Seawers had been there, he would have been able to attack him. But he can move 3. So he could have moved 1 more than his movement points show. But he's not going to do that. He's going to go 1, 2. The road crossing the river negates the cost to cross the river. He's going to attack Fort Garad. So Fort Garad is neutral. It's hostile to both sides. That's important. A lot of times a settlement will be welcoming to one side, so welcoming to the Oathborn, and hostile to the Fjordland. What that means is if Fjordland comes, they have to fight their way in because Fort Garad is hostile. If the Iron Legion came up and this were welcoming, they could just walk in and place a control marker there because they're welcoming to them, and they will let them take over control without a fight. In this case, Fort Garad is hostile to both sides. It doesn't want either of them to come in. So the Iron Legion is going to try to get into Fort Garad. Fort Garad, as I mentioned earlier, has a garrison of 1 white light 6-sided dice. This guy will attack with his full strength. Now that seems like, well, that doesn't seem fair. And it isn't really. So it's pretty easy to take small settlements like that. Fort Garad, however, is fortified. It has this tower. And what that means is that all of the rolls made by the Iron Legion are 1 less than what they show on their face. So if I roll a 5 with an Iron Legion attacking a fortified settlement, is reduced to a 4, and therefore is no longer a success. So the Iron Legion basically has to roll 6s or higher to score hits. Fort Garad only still rolls 5s in return. So it's not as quite an automatic win for the Iron Legion as you might think. So let's go ahead and roll it. The Iron Legion rolls his 2 heavy dice, 2 misses, and his light dice. 1 hit, that's a 6. Fort Garad is going to roll its 1 light dice. A 3, it misses. If you do even 1 hit against the fortress, which they did, 1 success by the Iron Legion versus 0 successes by Fort Garad means 1 hit is inflicted. That means that the Oathborn were victorious, Fort Garad is taken, and the Iron Legion is going to go into Fort Garad. That's an advance after combat. If you empty the hex that you're attacking, you can advance in after. All right, so he's going to place a control marker there because he captured it. So now they can build here. He also gets to loot. When you loot a settlement, it's 2 gold. So when the Iron Legion enters Fort Garad, it's a hostile settlement. You can't loot welcoming settlements. You only can loot hostile settlements. He will gain 2 gold because he looted it. So you capture a settlement, you put your control marker in, you loot, and then he's done. That's the end of that. Was his action, was to attack Fort Garad. Well, now we have 2 gold, so we could actually build somebody else. As you can see, as you keep making money, you can keep rolling along. We could make another miner. We will put a miner here. So that miner enters finished because it's adjacent to Shaded Vale. I will then also build one in Shaded Vale. So there's my two gold that I spent. And at that point, this miner could run off and do something. She doesn't want to. She's just going to hold it. So all of the Oathborn are finished. I don't want to build anymore. I didn't have to spend that gold. I could have saved it, but I chose not to. Once that's all done, that's the end of the turn. This flag goes down. Bloop, turn complete. And now it's Fjordland's turn. So that's how combat works. Let's look at a few of the other mechanics. So one of the other actions that your armies can perform is to recover. So this Sea Reaver here has been damaged. He's reduced, weakened, he's called, in the combat. So he would like to get back to full strength. In order to recover, you have to be adjacent to or in a friendly controlled settlement. Well, he is. He's adjacent to Fartumed, which is controlled by his faction. So on his turn, he could move 1, 2, and then he can perform his action. Well, in this case, he wants to recover. It's going to cost him this cost right here. It's usually half of the full strength cost rounded up. So his full cost is 3. To recover him costs him 2. So he would spend 2 gold, and then he would flip over to full strength, and now he's ready to go again. But he's also finished. That was his move. You can't do anything else after that. Let's look at how ranged works. So this ranger activates. It's going to move down here and attack this miner. So let's say she rolls 1. She's going to roll her 2 white dice. She rolls 1 success. The miners roll their 1 dice. They would also gain 1 for being in the mountains. You get some terrain bonuses. So he'd roll 2 dice also. Terrain is always adds white dice. So if you're in wilderness, you get 1 extra white dice. If you're being attacked across a river, you gain a white dice. So he would have 2. Ranger have 2. Let's say they each rolled 1 success. Ordinarily, that would be a tie, and nothing would happen. Both hits would have been countered by the miners, so the Rangers would do no damage. But remember, what range does is it lets you win ties. If only one side has range, they win ties. So if the Ranger and the miner each roll 1 hit, they both counter, it's a tie, but then because of ranged, the miner takes a hit. That's how ranged works. Let's look at that ambush ability, because that's pretty cool. So let's say this Draken's here. He has stealth. The Iron Legion doesn't have stealth. So therefore, if the Iron Legion attacked or the Draken attacked, the Draken could, at the beginning of combat, say, this is going to be an ambush. We're not going to do this as a normal combat. You could also fight as a normal combat, and there are times when you want to do that. But the Draken says, no, we're going to do an ambush. An ambush, what happens is each side strikes the other side. With the ambush, the unit with stealth striking the other army before the army gets a chance to respond. A strike is a little bit different than a normal attack. You roll your combat rating, and if you get any successes, you do a hit to the target. 1 hit, maximum. There's something called critical hits, which I'll talk about in a sec. The Draken says, Iron Legion, we're going to ambush you. So the Iron Legion says, fine, okay, go ahead, do your worst. I can't roll my dice yet, but you're going to roll yours. So the Draken's going to roll 2 heavy, 1 light dice. If any of these attacks are 7 or higher, you can't roll it on a light dice unless you have some bonus or something. But on the 8-sided dice, if you roll a 7 or an 8 on these heavy dice, you do what's called a critical hit. A critical hit gets confirmed by rolling an additional white dice. And if that dice rolls a success, that's an additional success. So the Draken has 2 opportunities here to do more than 1 hit in a strike. So strikes, which usually do a maximum of 1 hit, can do more if critical hits are rolled. The Draken, let's say he rolls a 7 and a 5. 7, 5, and a 3. So the 3 obviously is a miss. He rolls a 5. That's 1 hit. 7 from the heavy dice does 1 hit and is a critical. So the Draken would roll a 4th dice, another light dice, to confirm that critical. On a 1 to 4, does nothing, but on a 5 or 6, it adds another hit. So let's say he rolls a 5. That would be 2 hits placed on the Iron Legion during the ambush. Now, the Iron Legion has to take those hits before it can strike back. So he's going to take one, he's weakened, and he takes the second one, and he's eliminated, and the Draken goes in and captures Armbar. Stealth gives you the ability to do those ambush attacks with strikes. Ambush with heavy dice that allow you to do critical hits can be very powerful because it's the only way that a strike can do more than one hit is if you roll criticals. And the only way to get those is from these heavy dice. So if you look at the Dragon Slayer here, who's the dwarvish kind of version of that, she has stealth and she rolls 2 black dice, which give her a decent shot at getting 2 hits during a strike, which is potent. So she can kill you before you even get a chance to hit back, as can the Draken. That's really it for combat. Combat's pretty straightforward. I want to talk about the other action, which is the C move. So a C move, it's an actions, and it basically gives you a second move. So let's say these Rangers, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, ending up adjacent to Phosphonet. And these hexes all around the lake with this double line are coastal hexes. If you look on the sea over here, the Eastern Sea, these are all coastal hexes with this kind of this light blue and that heavy bordered hexide. That's a coastal hex. If you end your movement on a coastal hex, you have the option for your action to be a sea move. A sea move means you get to move again. You can only cross sea hexsides. So this all water hexside is a sea hexside. So you can only use ship movement to cross all sea hexsides or to go along coastal hexsides. So she could use her sea move to cross over the lake this way, or she could use the sea move to go along the coast this way. If you start in a coastal hex, you get 3 movement points. So let's say she starts over here. She could go 1, 2, 3. You have to end your move in a coastal hex. You can't end out at sea somewhere. So ship move is always coast to coast. If you start in a port, so that's this settlement marking here, the anchor, you basically get double that. You can move 6. So she could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and end way up there. So she could move 4 by land and then 6 by sea. So if you control ports, very powerful. That's your action. So when she would get to this hex, she would rotate 45 degrees and she would be finished. The Fjordlanders do have a special ability. There's a couple, actually. They have Ranger Woodcraft. So here's a Ranger. Rangers gain 1 white dice when occupying or attacking into a forest hex, and they pay no movement penalty. So she can go right through the forest, just like the Oathborn can go through mountains for 1 movement point. The Rangers, the Fjordlands Rangers, can go through forests at no additional cost, and they get a 1 white dice bonus when they're attacking into or out of a forest. The other benefit that the Fjordland have is seafaring. Ship movement is a free action for Fjordland units, and their ship movement is increased by 2. So instead of moving 3, she can move 5, and if she's in a port, she can move 8. That adds +2 to their movement rating, so 6 + 2. And how does that free action work? Well, there are a number of free actions. Placing a control marker in a settlement, that's a free action. You can do it. It doesn't constitute your action. You can do free actions pretty much at any point when they're eligible. So what a Ranger can do is when a Ranger is active, it can take a sea move as a free action. So it could move, let's say 1, 2, as a free action. Once a turn, she can do a ship move. So she can go 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then she still has 2 movement points left because her movement rating is a 4. Then she could go 1, 2. And then she still has her action. She could attack Mongoot. So the Fjordlanders are seafaring people. Their sea movement is very flexible, powerful. They're the only kingdom on the board that can move by sea and still attack afterwards. So they benefit when they're near these oceans. If you look at this river here, the Shar River, it has a sort of coastal looking heavy outline all the way to here, at which point it becomes just a regular river that follows the hexside. The Shar River follows these hexsides. So if you move, if you moved across this way, it would cost you a movement penalty to cross the river. It's also in a hex, though. So this hex is the Shar as a river hex. The Ranger can use sea movement to move along the rivers as well. So she could start here, say, I'm going to use my sea movement, go 1, 2, 3. So as long as you follow these major rivers, here's another example. The Karst River, it's a long river. So for her sea move, she could go 1, 2, enter the river hex, 3, 4, 5. So you can move up the river, and you can see how you can move from one hex to another hex as long as the river enters that hex. You can't go through hostile settlements. So if Nalnarog were held by the Oathborn and she were the enemy, she couldn't just go by boat through. She would have to stop. Same thing if this were occupied by an army. So if the Iron Legion were here, she can't just go hauling past them, but like this, because you can never enter an enemy occupied hex unless you have flying. So I think that's really it for the basic game. You can see how you gain control of settlements. You loot them to get money. You put your control markers down. You can then build out of them. This scenario is just 3 turns, and end of the game, you just count up to see who won. I want to show you, this is more just a show and tell. This is not, I'm not going to explain any of this, but I want to show you some of the things that you get in the advanced game. So when I was talking about what the differences are, there's monsters, there's heroes, and there's magic. So let's look at heroes first. Heroes are counters, like normal units. You buy them. So a dwarven hero costs 3. You don't know which hero you're going to get when you buy it. Each kingdom has 6 or more heroes. When you buy it, you spend your 3, and then you can flip it over, and oh, look, it's Dara. So she can stack with armies. She has this ability down here, which is spell casting. That lets her cast magic spells, which look like these. They're cards. So players are going to have hands of cards, which are spells. This symbol is the spell caster, so she could cast this spell. Cure wounds, recover target army. So remember how we said this guy had to be next to a friendly settlement and use his action to recover? Well, if Dara was within 3 range of him, she could just play this card to recover him for nothing as a free action. So what the spells let you do is they let you do all kinds of cool stuff like that. There's also treasures. Armies can go over here and like go into the ancient necropolis and like fight the monster there. And if they win, they get a treasure from it. And the treasure in this case would be the Endless Satchel. This gives you certain benefits when you have the Endless Satchel. So the advanced game introduces lots of cool magic cards, blood magic. You eliminate the caster, so that in this case, Dara would die casting this spell, but she would give your army 1 heavy and 1 light die. Very powerful in the right circumstances, but then you're sacrificing your leader to use it. The other kind of cool thing is that the Fjordland has its own spells that are only available to its casters. So they're called blessings. So there's spells, and then each kingdom has its own small deck of blessings that it can also draw from. And they have things that are specific to their kingdom. So only a Fjordland caster can use this spell. It has an ability that affects them. So let's look at like here, Northern Rangers, this one. A ranger army gains stealth. So now this ranger would have stealth. So she could declare an ambush. And if she occupies a forest hex, you convert 2 of your white dice into black dice, meaning you could do criticals. And again, you can do powerful ambush in the forest. So the rangers are really good at that. But again, only Fjordland can get these blessings. So that's how the magic system works in a nutshell. Heroes we looked at. And then the last thing is the monsters. So monsters come into play the same way. Let's say this army wants to attack the ancient necropolis here. That would be their action. So just like attacking a settlement or attacking an army, you can just attack a necropolis. What that represents is a band of these sea reavers are going to go into the necropolis and look for treasure and gold and see what they can find out of it. But as we all know, there's always a monster guarding these things. So let's see what the monster is. You pull this out of a cup. You don't know what it is. And, oh, it's a floating eye. So he basically functions just like a combat unit. These guys conduct combat. The floating eye can cast spells. So what would happen is the Oathborn would drop one of these on there, showing that this monster is controlled by the Oathborn player. You do this when you're playing with lots of different players. Obviously, there's just 2 players. You kind of know who has what. But this is now an Oathborn floating eye. It can cast spells as if it were an Oathborn mage. So you could, during combat, you could play a spell to cast on the Sea Reavers to gain extra combat ratings or to cancel the combat if you have a fog or something like that. He also has ranged, so if these guys tie, the Sea Reavers will take a hit. Monsters only have one hit point. If they take one hit, they're eliminated, and what happens is you flip the counter over, and that layer is now explored until the winter, when the monsters come back in the winter, and those are removed. So he's going to roll 3 light dice. If he's eliminated, the Sea Reavers are going to get a treasure, like we described, treasure card, and 4 gold. That's what the 4 is for. And then he would be like this, and this would go away. As long as he's not killed, let's say he fails, let's say the Sea Reavers don't kill him, he acts basically as a Oathborn army while he has that control marker on him and can cast spells. He will do 1 strike as an action during a turn. He can't move. He always stays in his lair, but he can do a strike out to a certain number of hexes. You can always strike adjacent hexes. If you're a mage, you can strike 2 away. If you're a flyer, you can strike 3 away. So they're really cool. The other thing that you get in the advanced game is there are sea lairs, which right up here, the Sunken Temple is a sea lair. Same deal. If, let's say the Oathborn this time, come up here, bloop, bloop, they attack the Sunken Temple. Well, the Sunken Temple has some sort of sea monster in it. So it's a Leviathan. Same deal. This Leviathan has stealth. Minor army is not a good guy to be going into any kind of lair. She'd have to fight the Leviathan. And in this case, the Leviathan would be a Fjordland monster. If the Leviathan's defeated, you get a treasure card and you get 5 gold. Leviathan can strike, has stealth, so can sneak up on the miners and hit with 2 heavies. Leviathan, very dangerous. So that's the game in a nutshell. It's actually mechanically very simple. The complexity comes from the fact that you have a very large map. This map is just one of 4 maps that all go together to make a giant map. There are scenarios on all the maps that range from small ones like this to very large ones with all 6 kingdoms. And there are lots of different pairings, the goblins fighting the orcs, or the army of the night and the goblins fighting the dwarves. There's 27 scenarios, plus there's something called the Chronicle, which basically covers the entire war with all 6 players, all 6 kingdoms. And you can start or stop it at any point during that duration. So lots of games that you can play on these 4 maps. I will be online able to answer questions. If you have any questions, post them either on Board Game Geek. There's a topic for this, and on consimworld.com, there's also a topic for this. And I will do my best to answer questions right away if you have any.